right, so we're looking at decision-making, problem-solving as well. Here's one thing I just want us from the very get-go to understand. If we want to become good at making wise choices, we need to understand this very basic principle. We're bad at making good decisions. And if you will recognize that you're bad at making good decisions, that will make you more likely to study, to seek insight, wisdom, to be cautious, to have other strong community to come in and to assist you. And yet if you fall for the human deception that, oh, we're just naturally good at making decisions, or thinking all of humanity is good at making decisions, then you will do very foolish things, never recognizing the biases, the selfishness, the destructive patterns that we're actually in. You need to come to terms right now that you and I are bad at this. That is the pathway to becoming better at it. But if you think you're already good at it, you're deceived, and you're going to experience the negative consequences of that. And because we're bad at it, then I think in part, one thing we need to do is figure this out. There are some decisions you only have to make once. Make them and then stick with them. Jenny and I, very early on in marriage, made some very important decisions, and we've never had to decide that again. We decided we're going to follow Jesus. We're going to be committed to the church. We're going to live in a generous kind of way. We're going to serve other people. We're going to bring other people along. As the pastor, you get invited into places you do not deserve, and we're going to use that as an advantage to bring other people as well into those situations and circumstances. So there's never been a weekend where we had to wake up and go, I wonder if we're going to go to church this weekend. And you go, oh, Kevin, will you get paid for that? Now, I do now. I didn't then. I was in graduate school then where I was in church all day long, all week long. If there's ever a time where you could say, I don't need to go to church this weekend, it was then. I was getting spoon-fed by these great theologians. The people that wrote the footnotes of the books the guy on stage was reading, that was who was teaching me on a weekly basis. But we made the choice. Church, we are committed to church. And so, yeah, we might have to ask the question on occasion, hey, the kids are sick, we're not feeling well, do we go? But it's just a given. And here's the truth. If you just make that a weekly decision, if you make church a Sunday morning decision every single week, you're not going to go very often. But if you decide once and then never have to decide again, remember Nick Saban, the college football coach down in Alabama, before he quit, he said his life is full of so many decisions that he would eat the same lunch every single day because he said, I have decision fatigue. I don't want to spend time wondering, what am I going to eat today? And so he ate a little cream pie every single day for lunch so he wouldn't have to make that decision. If you will recognize that we have so many decisions to make, that there are some decisions we just need to get off the table and just make it and move forward. And if you decide now to follow Jesus, then you won't have to wonder when the situation comes before you, are we going to obey his word or not obey his word? If you choose right now to live in a generous manner, and think about what generosity meant. Generosity in seminary, it meant pennies. It meant dollars. But dollars I really didn't have. But we chose from the very get-go, not only are we going to tithe, we're going to give above the tithe, and we did that in seminary. And at no point have I ever been given a raise or a new job or written a book, as if I've made any money off those. But at no point have I received money and then had to think, ooh, that's a lot of money if I give off that. We made that decision long ago. And there are some of you who are suffering the negative consequences of poor decision-making that literally you could make the choice one time and never have to make it again. You're bad at decision-making. If you have the opportunity to make a good one, make a good one. And then notice, here's what we're going to talk about now. Notice the desire is more about getting a good process of making decisions rather than good outcomes. You can make a wise choice and get a bad outcome. That's just life. There's some things that are beyond your control. So what's mine, what's theirs, what's God's? God is in charge of the outcomes. You're in charge of the process that you create. And so if you will fixate on how do we have the process of making wise choices? What does that look like for us? And it's going to be different in different situations and settings, but for the big decisions, there is a general process that we go through, and to keep on refining that process, because here's the truth. You can luck into a good outcome. You can luck into that, but it's going to be of no help the next time you have a decision to make. Whereas if you have a good process and you happen to get a bad outcome, that process is something you can lean on the next time. I am far more, as an organization, as a family, as an individual, as a couple, I am far more fixated on how are we making this decision than the actual decision that is made. Think about the process. All right, so remember a few things here whenever it comes to decision making. There's a direct correlation between a couple's shared involvement in decision making and their sexual satisfaction. In couples, let me put this more bluntly. In couples where he makes most of the decisions and she doesn't have a voice, they rarely have a good sex life. And yet, in situations in which they feel like there's a great partnership there in the decision making, then generally the sexual intimacy follows up as well. Poor decision making is often a failure of trust and or respect rather than actual process. If you have trust and respect between the two of you, so your friendship and your partnership is strong, you will be a much better decision maker. But if there's a lack of trust, think about this. If there's a lack of trust, then I really can't put my whole heart out on the table. I don't know how you're going to treat it, so I'm going to hold back part of me. So now we're making a decision where it feels like we're both fully invested, but in reality, you are partially invested because you don't trust me. All right, if there's not respect, then I'm going to feel as though if I don't respect you, then I'm not going to be influenced by you, so I'm really not going to listen to you. I'm really not going to seek out your opinion. I'm not going to allow your experience now to influence what I have going on. And now I'm just going to make the decision in isolation. It might look like we're making it together, but truthfully, I'm just making it myself. And now I'm actually cheating myself out of a great deal of the information I actually need to make the decision, which is your perspective. But if I don't respect you, then I'm not going to engage in that way. But when trust and respect are present, then you both have the ability to put your whole heart out on the table. You know you're going to be treated right. She's for me. She loves me. She's for me. And then when you respect each other, this person has a perspective I don't have. They know my blind spots. They can look out after me, the mistakes that I make. I know what hers are as well. And together, we understand how we can navigate forward. We tend to make pretty wise decisions. So here's what happens is so often if we're not very careful, the lack of trust and respect can cause us to be reactive rather than proactive. And decisions made in reaction to scenarios are far more likely to be poor decisions than those that are made proactively. Because whenever we are reacting, generally our emotions are heightened. The time crunch tends to be upon us. We haven't had time to think through or to process or to gather information. Whereas whenever we're acting in a proactive kind of manner, then in that moment we can figure it out. We can study. We can bring in wise counsel from other people. Consider the difference between if your car broke and you needed to buy a car in the morning immediately versus you're thinking about buying a new car and what you can do over a month. Now, for some of you, you can make a wise choice either way. But for a good number, the pressure of the moment would actually shrink our ability to make wise choices, whereas having time to respond is different. We want to be as proactive as we can. The two most important words in decision making are yes and no. And we need to learn to say both of them well. Now, notice how attachment plays into this. If you're anxiously attached, you're probably going to have a difficult time saying both of these words. If you're avoidantly attached, you will probably be very skilled at saying no, but not very good at saying yes. And these are two powerful words. Again, William Ury, who's the expert in all of this, he said yes and no are the right and left hands of decision making and wise thinking. That they're both necessary, and we need to learn to say both of them well. So what a yes is doing, a yes is now saying, I'm there. I'm writing my name to this. I'm stamping the approval of what is taking place. And to do that now takes a full engagement of who we actually are. And if you come from a non-secure attachment, then you're going to want to kind of hedge your bets just a little bit because you're uncertain of what happens if you're wrong. Whereas the idea of a no, the danger in a no is it can feel like rejection. And we all have a heightened alert level whenever it comes to the concept of rejection. So Uri has a great concept of how to say no well. He calls it the yes, no, yes. So whenever you're asked to do something that you don't want to do or you're going to turn down, he says, do it in this way. Say yes to the desire of the other person. So let's go with intimacy. This is one of the issues that y'all said is one of the biggest issues, and frequency and different drives was the biggest issue that y'all selected in that. So let's go with this idea of one spouse is going to initiate intimacy and the other one wants to say no. What's a good way to say no? So, can we? I don't know how. I mean, that's not the greatest pickup line of all time. 24 years. It's Wednesday? Okay. That's Flight of the Conchords, for those who are wondering. So one request, and now this person tired, doesn't feel well, whatever, not in the mood. Here's what Uri would say. I see you want to connect. I want that too. Yes. So yes to the desire. Yes to whatever is the good in what the request is. So look within the request, find something that's good if you can, and agree with that. I agree with the desire to, I want to connect. No to the actual event right now. I don't feel like it. I'm not in the mood. No. But yes to here's when it can happen. And it's kind of a no sandwich there. And what Uri says is what that will do is actually begin to minimize the feeling of rejection. Because the feeling of rejection, it's not necessarily just this specific scenario, but maybe it works in this scenario. It's vulnerable now to request intimacy. That's an act of vulnerability. So if you have a husband who is avoidant by nature, recognize that asking for intimacy is actually a request of vulnerability. Now, unfortunately, many times that's the only way some avoidance can be vulnerable. We got to work on that. But at least they're vulnerable. There's a pathway. They have that's there. And so to make sure that we're not rejecting the heart, to hear no can be no to this event, no to me, to who I am, no to ever it happening again. And it can be overwhelming rejection. So how is it that we can approve of the desire of the person of what's going on, give a pathway of how we can move forward, while at the same time being very clear, not feeling guilted into doing something that we don't want to do? So yes, no, yes. You have a kid, and they want to do something or buy something or get whatever it is. All right, yes, I see that connection that you want with me. You want to go spend time. Yes. No, we can't do it right now. It's a school day. You have to go to school, right, or something like that. But then, yes, here's when we can connect. It may not even be in the exact same format you want, but we're going to hit on the initial desire. Yes, no, yes is his process that's there. It's good to create guardrails, to know when decisions need to be made. I did premarital last night, and one of the things that we talked about regarding money is get together with your spouse and make a decision at what price point do you need to consult one another before something is purchased. Every couple in this room should have that. Every couple. And it changes over time. I remember for me and Jenny in seminary, it was $100. That's what it was. We didn't spend over $100 without consulting or texting, or I would know, hey, she would say, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Okay, I know, that's going to be more than $100. I get that, right? Well, it's like I can't fill up my car now for that, right? So that's no longer our price point. Our financial scenario has changed just a little bit. But there is a price point. There's a price point that we have an agreement on. And I mean, she has a great job and I have a great job. And yet all the money is ours. It's not his money and her money. It's okay to separate, have different spending amounts for different, to say, hey, you get this amount per month and you get this amount per month. But all the money is ours. It's not his and hers. Not separate. I don't care who's making the money. It's ours. And so we've made a decision together. Here's how we're going to spend that. And here's the price point that we have to agree on. Little things like, at what point does late deserve a text or a phone call? Just come to terms with that. All right, you know what? Hey, if you're going to be 5 minutes late, not a big deal at all. We went to somebody's house the other day, and we pulled up, and on the way there, I said, hey, text them and tell them we're going to be late. And Jenny said, we're going to be 6 minutes late. I said, I know. But in an iPhone world where you have maps, the window to me is 4 minutes. You can be 2 minutes early, you can be 2 minutes late, and you're still on time. But in an iPhone world, there's no excuse to be late beyond that. And she married me nonetheless. To which she said, I wish you had the same viewpoint of sermons. Going longer than 2 minutes is more than acceptable whenever it comes to sermons, in my opinion. So what decisions are made separately and which ones must be made together? And this is an ongoing discussion. It's an ongoing process. So again, remember kind of the lanes here. There are some things that Jenny's going to do and not even really have to talk to me about unless it comes up. Some things I'm going to do, not even really have to talk about unless it comes up. Either of us have the right to speak into anything. We're married. All of this is together. We have the right to speak into anything, but I trust her. I respect her. She's going to handle some things great. She trusts me. She respects me. I'm going to handle some things great. There are other things that each of us individually lead, but with the consultation of each other. And so whenever we're looking at the health of our kids, of how that happens, one of us might take the lead, but the other one is going to be consulted on the big issues specifically. Then there are other things. We have to make this decision together. We can't make it on our own. I mean, I've heard of guys before in the past, and they would say, yeah, I got a vasectomy. My wife doesn't know. Don't tell. I'm like, wait, what? Like, that's a joint decision. That is not something you get to make. It doesn't happen that way. And yet they don't have these boundaries that are set. And so to figure out, what do we do together? What does one lead and the other lead with consultation? And then what do we do generally in isolation? And just if you want to be updated, that's great. Jenny, running her own business, she says, look, I'm tired of finances. I don't want to deal with finances. You handle that. You make sure we're doing it well. And you don't tell me any news except for the bad news. That's all she wants. She says, if you tell me good news, I might start spending too much, which she never would. She's a rural Oklahoma farm girl. She is never spending too much, right? But in her mind, she would. So I handle the finances. I handle our giving and our saving, all those things. I will update her on occasion. I'm just doing my taxes this week. I will kind of give her the overview of the taxes. She's just done the taxes for her business. But she's like, Kevin, go. Now, if at any moment she wants to step in and say, hey, I want to be more involved, you have every right. Let's go. You have every right. But until then, I'm just going to do it. There are other aspects. There are aspects about Ella I have no clue about. No clue. I trust her. I love her. I really don't want to know. Like, keep it going. Like, this is great. Then there are other things that we constantly will text each other. I'll be at the doctor, and I'll text Jenny, hey, here's the decision I'm making. Here's what I think we're going to do. To understand what decisions need to be made together and what is it that can be made separately. So here's a few principles. We'll run through these quickly. Text in your questions. I think I've figured it out. I think I can do both jobs at once, just not for long. So, us against the problem, not the problem between us. So you want to get on the same side. Remember, don't let the problem now divide you. I already talked about this next one. On big issues, a tie means we don't move forward. He doesn't just get the say, or notice this, she doesn't just get the say. It takes both of us on certain issues. You have to define what those are. Define what each of you wants and understand your partner's perspective. This is a great thing not only for your partner, but also for your bosses, for your coworkers. Understand what they value. If I'm going to take a topic to my bosses, I don't present it the same way every time. I don't walk into Ray's office talking about, hey, I found great ways to save money. I mean, he finds that important. He wants to know how many people are we ministering to. I'll walk into Ray's office going, hey, I think I figured out a way to do this ministry to reach 100 new couples. He's all about it. Then I walk into the executive pastor's office, Scott Connor, and say, hey, I found a better way to do this financially. Now, that's not being deceitful. That's now speaking the language that is important to other people. So you understand what is it that you value. Now, how can I speak to that? What we so often do is we give a defense for what we value. And the other person really doesn't care that much, which immediately sets them up to be dispassionate about the topic, which causes us to assume no. Whereas if we would lead with the concept of, here's what's important to you, and here's how this fits you, now it's also important to me. And to look in a relationship, you're going to have different values, and that's a strength. Now, how does this decision speak to both of those things? If it doesn't, we might pause. If it does, we can then move forward. So understand the language of other people. Avoid the sucker's choice. This comes from Kerry Patterson in his great book, Crucial Conversation. So the sucker's choice is this. We tend to create decisions into binary options. And whenever humanity is left with a decision that is one of two options, we tend to make the wrong choice. It is much better to ask, is there a third way? Is there another option? If you're interviewing people, you don't bring it down to just two candidates. You need a third candidate to begin to figure out. If you just have two, you're far more likely to make a bad choice. Now, here's the fascinating thing to me. There's a point in brain development to where the brain can really only function in binary choices. And that time frame is between the ages of about 15 and 21. And so the question is, do I go to the party or not? I can either be cool or not cool. There's no other options. And that's what causes so many poor decisions by teenagers, because their brain actually isn't quite capable yet to begin to think about third ways, other options. And every decision becomes a binary option. And it's almost like, for those of you who are Seinfeld fans, it's almost like it would be better for you to be opposite George whenever it comes to binary options, that whichever one you think you're going to make the other one, and you're more likely to be right. But as adults, what we can do instead is to recognize binary options are dangerous, because we're just playing them off of each other and not looking at the whole picture of what's going on. And Patterson calls that the sucker's choice. There's only two ways. We have no choice. We almost always have another choice. Let's find what that is. No reading between the lines. This is a long-time Thompson principle. I can't predict what you mean. I can only take you at what you say. And so it can't be this idea of, hey, I want to go play golf. And she's like, oh, yeah, go ahead. And I have to read now, was she a serious go ahead, or was that like a threatening go ahead? Like, oh, yeah, go ahead and run by the lawyer's office while you're on out. That's a passive-aggressive approach. Learn to say what you mean. And notice this. If there's a scenario where you didn't say what you meant and you find yourself kind of upset about it, go to your spouse and apologize. I'm sorry, I was not clear, and I understand why you did what you did, but I'm frustrated by it. Notice I'm not angry, I'm frustrated by it. I'm frustrated by it. And next time, I promise you, I'm going to be more clear. And now that's on me, or it's on her, to own that. But we do not read between the lines. It's too dangerous. A good decision-making process, this isn't mine, but I saw it somewhere. I think it's great. Each list the issue's importance from 1 to 10, and then allow that to influence the decision. So here's what that means. If we're talking about a topic, and I really don't care, I'm a 2, but Jenny's an 8. Okay, within reason, Jenny, you make that decision. I don't care. And so you each list it. How you can just say it verbally. Hey, 1 to 10, how important is this to you? Well, it's a 5 to me. Okay. Well, it's a 4 to me. All right, we're both involved. And you can, one thing Tim Ferriss always says here is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this to you? And 7 isn't an option. So you either got to go 8 or 6 or any of the other numbers. And then if you can, if something's more important, all right, great, you take that. Or we'll do what you want to do here. If we don't care, if we're going out to eat, I should have done a whole session on that. The whole session should have been on how to choose a restaurant. This just hit me at this moment at 7:51. Next session. That's it. Yeah, y'all, your survey will completely change now. But that idea, I don't care. Okay. Well, how important is this to you? You know what? It's an 8. Well, we can eat wherever you want to eat then, because I really don't care. But if you do, then let that. It doesn't necessarily mean whoever says the highest number gets to make the call. Hey, do you want to have sex or not? How important is this to you? It's a 10. Doesn't work that way. Give each other time to think and the permission to change opinions. Give each other time to think. So for some of you, you're very quick on your feet, and it's great. For others of you, you need to process. I'm actually a processor. I think I'm pretty quick on my feet, but I will stay in meetings. I was in meetings all day today. Generally speaking, probably not as much as they want me to, but generally speaking, in meetings, I'm very quiet, and I'll think about it. And the next day, I'll text. I'll be, hey, I've been thinking about this, and they're like, I don't even remember what meeting we're talking about now, right? But I'm a processor. Allow each other to process, and then we're adults. We change opinions. So think about this. Very rarely are my opinions 100% zero. Far more often, they're 51-49. What's your, back in Arkansas, they would always make the joke, if you don't like Kevin's answer today, ask him again tomorrow. Because I'm constantly taking in more and more information, and so my opinions are changing based on the information that I have. Well, if I recognize that, I'm going to change opinions. You know what? You're going to change opinions. And so I would hope that we're both growing in the process, and we have to give each other space to say, hey, we negotiated this out 5 years ago, and it worked great 5 years ago. We're in a different season of life now. We need to renegotiate this now based on what we believe right now. Now, what's a good process for us to move forward? And then finally, tone and body language mean as much, if not more, than words. I can still hear my sister telling my mom, tone does not matter. With a tone that would cut with a knife. And I get it when a teenager says that, but tone matters. Now notice this, it's a form of now non-secure attachment. You can be aggressive in your tone because you're afraid of the intimacy of what is actually taking place.